Yeah, so let's start there, Bill. The richest data set we have on ourselves is story, and not in the once upon a time sense, but in the real vulnerable narrative that we live out day by day. Can you explain what you mean by that and why that matters now more than ever?
Sure. So when I say story, I'm talking about vulnerable or honest disclosures. And I'm not talking about tomes that last, tens of minutes, but I'm talking about 1 to 3 minute kind of just segments of your life that you're describing. And the reason it's so rich is because I wear an Aura ring, I've got a Garmin watch on, I've got a Whoop band on, because part of our work is also taking that episodic data, that kind of biometric data, and assessing it for how it affects your life or how it defines your life. But those things are the what. How many steps did I take? The what of my steps. How is my heart beating? The what of my heart. It doesn't tell me about the why. And the why is the context around us. And there's context that is, social and cultural context that's all around us. There's context that's, very kind of physical on what's happening to me right now. And then there's context that's emotional and cognitive and, the subconscious around your motivations and your expectations and all that dirty, squishy stuff. Unless you're speaking in run-on sentences, messy, no punctuation, flipping from topic to topic, you really don't get an insight into the why of self. And this is, pardon the statement, why story is so important.
I love that. Now, I don't have a PhD level of understanding of, I mentioned earlier when I was discussing Lotic that it's a well-being ecosystem. What does it actually do? How does it turn our story into something actionable? Can you break it down for us non-PhD holders?
Sure. So everyone I think at this point is familiar with large language models. And large language models hit the scene for real in 2022. And they take all of the information that's out there available and they kind of consolidate it and they turn it into what seems to be an interaction with you, an answer to your query. But it's not really a back and forth between you and another human. It's, I've got a question, give me the answer, right? And I'm going to ask you another question because that answer wasn't exactly right. Well, that's not really the way we interact, right? We interact in a more relational sense. So what we set out to do at Lotic was to build artificial relational intelligence. So I like to think of it as the last mile of interaction between very, very powerful technology systems and the human. And to get the most out of these technology systems, because remember, technology is just a tool. We like to villainize it and be afraid of it, but it is simply a tool. That to get the most out of it, we need to be able to interact with it as naturally as possible. We need to be able to interact with it in a way that you can, if you rupture, right? You tell it you hate it, you tell it you don't like it, that you have to repair that, right? Because if I were to say something nasty to either the two of you, which I never would, I'd have to repair that, right? I couldn't just delete and come back and forget that it happened.
Right.
So what Lotic set out to do was build this relational intelligence, because that's what actually makes people most comfortable to be vulnerable, to pull out these stories that color in the why of their life. And if they have that, if an individual has that at the individual level, we can make better decisions that serve us, right? Not a better decision as it relates to what Doug thinks should be best for me, but what's good for me. Not a decision of the 77th percentile of men my age living in Austin, Texas, blah, 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 blah. I should be doing this. No, Bill, this is what will suit you best because this context tells us that that's most important.
And Bill,
And
does
so
it
that's
help?
what Lotic was trying to do.
Okay. And does it help us to learn about ourselves, like the sort of, in the biblical sense, know thyself, really understand who we are? Because a lot of people sort of go through life not always trusting themselves in terms of who they are. And, sometimes we're much more open to asking other people, what do you think about me? Who am I? What should I do with my life? What career should I go into? We're often looking outwards. And it's quite difficult actually sometimes to kind of figure yourself out. It's hard work. So is that what Lotic sort of helps us do? It sort of hands hold us into figuring out who we are and using pattern recognition in terms of all the inputs that we put in to help us understand patterns and
Yes.
self-knowledge.
Yeah. So the know thyself is really, it's spot on.
Hmm.
It's self-reflection, self-acknowledgement, those sorts of things, which when I hear people say those words, I shudder. And I'll share a silly thing about me, given the fact that I started this company. I've often joked that if it's the end of the world and I were stuck in a bookstore and like I had to light something on fire, which I never would want to light books on fire, I would go right to the self-help section and burn it. Right? Because like that's where I would find my heat.
Hmm.
Because I just don't think that a lot of those things actually help you know yourself better.
Mm.
I actually think that they make you feel maybe a little bit worse about yourself. They give you band-aids.
Mm.
And what you really need to do is dive deeply into what is happening up here. We have a subconscious that
Hmm.
has what are our motivations? What are our expectations about the world? Expectation being very important. If my expectation is different than the reality around me,
Hmm.
I'm going to be upset.
Hmm.
I'm going to be anxious. I'm going to be irritated. Well,
Disappointed.
disappointed. What is the thing that I can do to retrain my expectations so it actually meets the reality? We can't do that without understanding what's happening here first.
Mm.
So the know thyself is not just like, oh, well, I really love baseball and pizza. It's more like, wow, I think that the world should be this way, yet it's this other way. I don't understand why I'm always frustrated. Well, it's because there's that chasm in between where I think it is and what it is. And so that's what we're trying to get at. It is super uncomfortable to get at that.
Mm-hmm.
But once you have it, it is the most insightful, most valuable set of information you have on yourself. And it gives you direct agency to act on behalf of yourself in spaces like healthcare and financial advisory and consumer goods, what I buy, how I buy it, all of that sort of stuff. If I know myself better, I can do those things better.
It's a real service to humanity because I was speaking to a friend the other day, we were having a drink, and he was saying how when he, during his sort of appraisals in his companies, nobody actually gives proper feedback anymore. People are too worried of offending people. People often sort of aren't as direct as they used to. People often expect you to figure out what the subtext is, and actually it's so opaque that people often are sort of told, oh, you're doing great, and then no promotion. And so consequently, just the growth for self-improvement isn't there because the feedback culture has taken a bit of a dive across sort of, corporate land. And so tools like this actually give you that safety to tell you actually, this is who you are and these are the issues. And self-awareness is so important as we figure out, especially as we sort of progress in our career. In the early stages, it's very much like technical, what you know. But as you sort of progress further and further, it's sort of how do you build relationships? How do you collaborate? And there's a lot of introspective work that needs to happen for you to unlock those high levels in your career.
I, I couldn't agree more. And I think it boils down to the fact that over time, and we blame this on technology, but it is not technology's fault. It is our fault. If we have to assess blame, it
Hmm.
is the human. But over time, we have decided that performative is much better. It's a much better way to express ourselves because it's far more interesting. It's things that it's what we think others want to see. And what our system allows for is intentional and authentic engagement. And so your example that you gave about giving feedback within an organization, it's super hard to be authentic and intentional because the rest of the world is performative. So there's like this gap has been created. So if you're intentional and authentic with someone, you're like, hey, you could really work on this. And this is something that is really challenging you and blah, 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 blah. The gap is so large that they're going to be like, who are you to tell me this? Right? Like, what are you talking about? Versus when we didn't have this kind of performative environment that kind of spanned globally, right? Anybody can watch anything I put up on social media. Anybody can watch anything I put up on YouTube. If I didn't have that, when I didn't have that, it was a lot easier to give authentic feedback because it was just between you and that person. And the filter was such that that's what you expected out of a human interaction. We've kind of messed up our heads a little bit in terms of what we should expect from another human from an interaction standpoint.
Yeah. So Lotic.ai, I have a friend, and over coffee, she told me recently she's developed the habit of journaling in ChatGPT in a single chat. And cool. That's sort of the concept here. It's an online tool where you can journal, except your tool is substantially deeper than just using a ChatGPT because you built it with behavioral scientists, psychologists. Any other letters that I should be including in there?
I like to
it's
say
built with science.
Yeah, it's built with science. A lot of ists and ologists that we brought in that understand the humans. And then we partnered with universities to check our work. So University of Pennsylvania, Princeton, Johns Hopkins, to check our work, not to help us build it, but instead to say, hey, this is what we found.
Right.
What do you think about this?
And Farzana and I are going to share what we found in just a second because we had the opportunity to use it for a week, and it's amazing. I want to ask you, I'm a PR pro. I'm working on a campaign, or I'm managing a tense internal relationship. Lord knows I've had those. Where does Lotic come in? Why would I use Lotic for my self-awareness as a PR pro? It sounds like something needy people need to use.
Yeah, if everyone has challenges on a day-to-day life, whether that's a challenge with something that's inanimate, like my house, I don't know what to do about my house. It's I've got to pay my mortgage, and how do I, construct my spending habits so that I can do that? Or whether it's with other humans, right? Like, I cannot stand this person. Every time I say something, they take it the wrong way.
House and spouse do rhyme. Yeah, go on.
Exactly. And so Lotic can help in all these spaces because really what you're looking for is the cues of why it is you react in particular ways and how you might adjust that. I like to think people talk about being self-aware all the time. And I've met people who are like, the gurus of meditation, and they go on these, 2-week silent retreats and whatnot. And they're like, I'm 100% self-aware. Like, I just know. And I'm like, no, you're 50% self-aware. The most you can be is 50% because the other 50% is the other person you're talking to, right? Like, you don't get a chance to control what they think. And so Lotic allows you to be the best that you can. And to your example, and to some examples that we've gotten back from people, because we can't see the way we've dealt with privacy and security, I can't see anybody's data. So if you all have used the system, thank you very much. I can't see that you have.
That's a big question. So if I go in and I tell it my deepest, darkest secrets, whoa, you're Mark Zuckerberg, you're sharing that for marketing purposes.
Nope.
You're not doing that.
Nope. It is protected at the individual level. I can't even reach back in and see what you've shared. And it's actually maintained on a blockchain that is specific to you so that it's immutable, but also protected with the advanced cryptography, if we can say it that way, that's available out there. I use a lot of the same tools that I built for that I learned how to build for the military during my time, and then I've kind of honed over time. So it's very, very secure. very, very private. And the thing is that so my point was, I've gotten feedback from people because I can't look in to see what happened. They give us feedback, like unsolicited feedback. And somebody wrote back, they're like, "You saved my job." Yeah. I was like, "That's weird." Okay, like tell me more about that. I was going to quit my job because I could not stand my boss. And by using this system, not one time, but over time, over the course of a month, I was able to change my relationship with my boss by taking small steps, which is how we make change, by taking small steps to adjust the relationship that I had with them. And now we're not talking past each other. Now I'm not going to say that our relationship is like, wonderful and like we're hugging each other each time but we can be in the same room. And because of that, I've kept my job. And I was like, whoa, that's cool. That's really cool. So that's, why should someone want to do this? Because we all have challenges. We all have challenges. We can always do better. Every single one of us can always do better. And the first step is understanding why we're doing what we're doing today and then how to move forward from there.
So, Bill, you talked about people becoming data brokers of their own, and I'm obsessed with dogs. So, I go on the website and I'm just looking at dogs just randomly. And then, of course, all of a sudden, all my other social media, they seem to get the memo and just pushing me lots of dog products, which of course I just buy them all en masse. My dog is probably the most spoilt canine in London. I wanted to know a little bit more because I just passively give my data. I don't read the long kind of, contracts that you have to approve when you're when you're downloading software channels and social media channels and so forth. Why do you think we have openly just given our data so easily to the point where we just feel as if it has no value? And now all of a sudden you're coming up with this product, which is actually, you should be your own data broker. You should see value in your data. And actually, instead of just giving it away to big platforms, how can you harness your data so that it works for you, not for the advertiser that's pushing a product?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And I think it varies by age demographic. It definitely varies by geography. But I think it boils down to in the late 90s. In the late 1990s, early 2000s, all of a sudden people were offering, it went from paid email services to free email. We're like, holy cow, like I can get free email? That's amazing. And it was at that point that we got ourselves to where we are today because we didn't ask the question of why free? Like, what is it? How valuable is it to you, Google? And I don't mean to pick on Google because they're by far not the only ones. But for me, Gmail, I was like, holy cow, I get Gmail? I just got invited to it and it's free, right? I didn't question what is it worth to them? What is my data worth to them? And all we need to do is go look at the stock market for these publicly traded technology companies and yeah, the data's worth something, right? The data's worth a ton. And so would we trade off free email for, say your data's worth $10,000 a month, 10,000 pounds a month to Google? Would you take free email for that? Is that what it's worth to you? Or would you just buy a carrier pigeon and pocket the 10,000 pounds, right? Like, and I'm being silly, but like, we don't have that ability to make the trade because we don't understand. We don't know how much it's worth. So without that, it's really easy just to take the free stuff and to be like, I don't have control over my data. Like, I don't know. I don't even know what it's worth. Like, why do I care? I don't care because I don't know what it's worth. Like, and we get into that cycle of just giving. I would encourage you not to read those user license agreements for the most part because they're mostly cut and pasted from other user license agreements. Like, it's notorious that companies will go and just cut and paste what they see from other companies just to save the legal bills.
Or use Gen AI to generate it.
Yeah, right. And so, and it doesn't really get into the financial piece. It doesn't get into the dollars and cents.
Okay, how are you making money on this, Bill? It's an awesome tool. We used it for free. I presume that website, and we'll put a link to it in the show notes if you're cool with that.
Yeah, yeah.
So the listener can go on and do it. Do it. This is an amazing tool. How are you making money from this, man?
Yeah, so it's to be clear, when you do put anybody can go to this site and start an account, and it's web based, so you don't need to have like the most recent smartphone or whatever. You can just use it across platforms. It is a demonstration system, so it is not fully articulated for everything that we can do, but it gives you a pretty good idea. It gives you good insights.
There'll be a premium option.
So there are other versions of it out there right now in use by companies, by entities.
Sure.
And by entities, I mean, we're working with municipalities, we're working with large nonprofits, looking at how to better understand their population, but actually help their population understand themselves. And I can go back to how you can do both of those things at once in a second. But the way we make money is in a B2B sort of sales. Hey, you want to make this available to your entire population? That's fantastic. It's X number of dollars per person per month. And what you get out of it is, better informed, better behaved, just essentially more holistic humans. And we can abstract using very cool statistical tools. We can abstract out key aspects of population data without giving any insight into whom the individual is or the individuals themselves. And we can hand the organization like, hey, you want a pulse of how your workforce is right now? Here's the pulse. Not you have to go do a survey. You just query the data and it comes back and says, here you go.
So I used it this past week. And I have to admit, the very practice, this is going to sound so sexist, but the very practice of using it, like sharing my feelings, like actually doing that was weird and strangely rewarding, I found. It's not that I'm out of tune with emotion, but the very practice of doing it and the prompts were thoughtful. It definitely follows what I consider to be therapist-like principles, where there's validation of my point followed by further digging. And it made me, there were answers that took me 15 minutes, and yet I only provided 2 sentences because I had to sit and think. Farzana, did you had a chance to use it as well?
Yeah.
How'd it go?
I did. Life can be so busy, and especially as PRs, we're people-pleasing animals. So we're always looking at other people's stories, and we just don't really pause for our own. So it felt very indulgent, actually.
Yes.
And it felt like, and it also it felt awkward because I'm just not used to thinking about myself. But it was quite transformative because actually it made me feel a little bit more connected to myself and more attuned to actually, why do I do things? Why do I feel things? And it did make me start, because I've been using it, today, and then I had some meetings afterwards, and I started sort of thinking to myself, well, how do I feel about this person? How am I responding in this situation? And it just connects you with, I think, these natural instinct that we slightly bury, and often we make decisions, based upon our sort of thinking, our cognitive, and not so much thinking about the gut and our sort of our physical response to situations and people, because everything's up here. And actually, I think what's really an interesting byproduct of using your tool, Lotic, is it makes you feel much more connected to your other senses rather than just, visual and cognitive.
Yeah, it's if you imagine watching a movie, and there are some movies you come across and they just make you think. You spend 2.5 hours with the movie, you spend 2.5 weeks, maybe 2.5 years thinking about it, or you never stop thinking about it. For me, the movie Contact with Jodie Foster and Matthew McConaughey was like that. Just how I can weave my own stories beyond it. That's what I found this tool to be, that it really made me dig a little deeper. So we'll put the link in the show notes, getlotic.ai.
Correct.
Right. Go there, create an account, blockchain technology. So it is private. Thank you for telling me. I was a little careful with what I put in there, but now I know. I'm going to keep using it because I think it's amazing what you've built. One nasty question, if I could, Bill. The weakness with surveys is that they are filled out aspirationally. If I'm the one providing the inputs, how valid are my inputs? Am I not responding aspirationally instead of who I really am? Ultimately, does the AI not come to understand who I think I am instead of who I really am?
Yeah, so it's interesting. You can game a survey, but it's very hard to game your spoken word over time. Surveys are typically done in one sitting. I don't know about you, but like there's a lot of times within a survey where I'm like, well, this is kind of what they want to hear, so I'm kind of just going to share this, or I don't really want to be
today. So
yeah, I don't want to be too vulnerable, so I'm not going to answer with very likely or something like that. It is hard with our spoken word based on how we move from topic to topic and how we relate topics to one another. It is extremely hard to game that. And when you're talking about over time, it's nearly impossible. Because you can just pull out, there are themes that will be pulled out. And if you are disingenuous, if you are guarded, if you are about a particular thing, it'll show up every time you mention that thing with respect to something else. It'll look different than when you mention other things with respect to those same something else's. And so, yes, patterns, trends, those sorts of things play into this, but it's also our algorithmic approach identifies this based on what we know about motivational interviewing, based on what we know about how humans' brains work and how they shift from topic to topic and how they're relating things. I mean, really, if we were to take your engagement with Lotic and were to map it out into main topics and how they're related to one another, it looked like the biggest hairball ever. Right? Just because it's just like dirty and messy, and yours would be totally different than Farzana's, and like it would just be like just a hairball. But that's what makes us so cool. Like humans are so interesting because we're these complex systems that have emergent behaviors and emergent ties across topics. How else do you get at that? I mean, this is really what we're trying to do, is help people get at that. I love that you both tried it. It can be annoying as heck, and I helped build it. It can be annoying because it tells me this, be like, hey, you talked about this thing, and and I've had to say to it, like, I do not want to talk about this anymore. Like, I don't want to talk about this. Like, stop bringing that up.
Will it eventually tell me, hey, Doug, you just said red, and yesterday to the same idea, you said blue? Will it call me on a conflict?
Over time, it will look to help you understand that you have that discrepancy.
Okay. Oh, that's awesome.
It's not going to hit you in the face with it.
Okay.
Because that's not what a therapist would do if they're doing their job correctly.
Therapists, who needs them? We have AI now.
Well, so this is the thing. We've not tried to digitize. I am of the strong belief, and it was from my time at Rand where I just watched brilliance come out of these people who had been trained for years and years in these PhD programs. I don't know how to automate that, but I do know how to supplement it. I do know how to augment their skill set. And so if we take just the therapist point of view here, I will go into, I'm not above saying that I see a therapist once a week. I mean, I'm a founder of a fledgling company that's been around for 5 years and is, hitting the market and like going through all of its struggles. I see a therapist once a week. It's hard for me to say, hey, here's what's happened over the past week. like likely I'm going to say, here's what happened yesterday, because I've got recency bias and I've got the thing that's just on my mind. I've gotten to taking in my insights from Lotic and being like, here's what happened to me last week. She takes a quick look at it because she's learned and an expert and like she's really good, and she's like, boom, boom, boom. Okay, here's what we're talking about.
So it's like my mental Fitbit.
That's right. Like, I mean,
you can use that if you want. You can use that.
Thank you. Done.
Yeah.
It's written down.
Bill, I love this tool. Thank you so much for your time today.